All right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. Keep your views coming at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak. Let's shift gears now and talk about the failed talks and the protests. But Okello, you wanted to have a right of response because Alwale said you have a history of getting things wrong. So I'll give you a chance, 1 minute to respond, and then we talk about the failed talks.
Well, he made an allegation that we have that history. We had BBI, which was our baby, and we believe that had BBI passed, all these problems we have today may not have been in place. So BBI died in court because we took it upon ourselves to midwife the entire process. This time, the shoe is on a different foot. They have taken up the Finance Act as their own baby.
Yeah.
So we are on the other side. So I don't know when he talks about history, is he alluding to the fact that we are going to fail in a court of law? Or where are we going to fail, if that is a history he would want to rely on? But I wanted to say something about public participation, which is a key component in constitutional making process or any legislation. The drafters of our constitution never worked in vain when they said you cannot force anything the throat of Kenyans without their participation.
Yeah.
Most of the issues that have collapsed in our courts of law have a connotation of failure on public participation. So it is key. In fact, if you have an issue with government, just go and say that there was no adequate public participation, and that thing will collapse. And particularly with this Finance Act, 22 new clauses were introduced midstream, 22, that never went through any public participation. And that is something that will have to be put forward as we litigate this matter.
Okay.
My brother, the lawyer, Honorable Kamoto,
yes.
Honorable because one day he will, seems to think that everything that has timelines is cast on stone. Because he keeps on saying there are certain laws that took effect on the 1st of July.
Yeah.
There is nothing that is cast on stone in this world, and the courts have all what that it takes to tinker or disturb such an issue. So he should not get worried that the time is quickly going by. But finally, again, even when you talk development, every region wants some development, a semblance of development, so to speak. I come from a region that has always been increasingly alienated by successive regimes. Yeah. Only during the handshake period did we see some little things going that way, during that short period of time. But successively, we have not seen anything worth writing home about.
Okay.
When your children are hungry and there is a calamity in a country, you do not focus on development, but you step back, reflect, and retool on feeding that family. Forget about development. Development, we will develop this country.
Okay.
Or our children will develop it when we are gone. But feed us now.
Okay.
So this idea of saying we must develop and therefore subject us to punitive taxation measures, that should not apply.
Okay.
Every Kenyan is going through very difficult moments now.
All right.
When I drive to town, you can see the number of people walking, not because of their liking, but they are conditioned so by William Ruto.
Okay.
And he's putting in more pressure on an already suffering populace by adding more taxes.
Okay.
So I would suggest to Honorable Duale here, because I think he meets Ruto probably once a year.
Halwale.
But when you, Honorable Halwale, when you get to meet him, tell him we don't need development now. You don't develop a people who are going to die of hunger next week. Let him concentrate on feeding us. And feeding us is very simple. Let him bring back subsidies. Let him bring the cost of living down. And we are going to afford unga ya ugali at 100 shillings.
Okay. Let me bring in first the outsiders on this issue of the failed talks and the protests, which are now starting tomorrow. And Kamoda, I'll start with you. What is missing in this bipartisan talks from an outsider's point of view? Because I know Aluale and Okello are deeply involved in it. So let's start from outsiders. What is missing in these bipartisan talks?
What exactly is missing is goodwill. from the side of Azimio.
From the side of Azimio?
Yes.
Not from both sides?
No, because you remember, if you recall correctly,
Yes.
it is the president who, on his own volition, decided to be the first at the table. When there was a stalemate, he yielded as a gentleman and said, let's have a conversation. And that birthed now the bipartisan talks. But surprisingly, the people who were asking for the dialogue at that time now seem to have developed new ideas. They no longer want to dialogue. They want to move to mass action, move to the streets, and other affairs, which unfortunately are not the most useful path to follow for the country. We have experiences of what transpired the last time they went out on Maandamano, and the kind of damage we saw, the kind of destruction that we saw, the lives were lost. We had total breakdown in law and order. Police were attacked. So the path that is now being advocated by the Azimio side is definitely one that will take us down. It will not help the country. And what would be suitable at this point is for the Azimio side, at least for once, to come down from the ivory tower and agree to have genuine talks, because the other parties remain open to genuine discussions, and they have shown that by having acceded to the call for talks, which they did. But now if you call talks and then you don't appear at the table, you call for talks and then you go to the streets, then it creates a paralysis, which now is difficult to resolve. So as far as I am aware, the government side remains extremely committed to a conversation that would help resolve issues that have arisen. And it should be a continuous game, because as we live in this country, there will always be an asymmetry of ideas. There's no single point in time when we are going to reach a unanimity amongst all the Kenyan citizens. So you have to keep dialoguing. And it doesn't mean that every time you have a different perspective of how things should be done, you rush to the streets. Remember, even the other side, Kenya Kwanza, if they so wished, they could also go take a similar path. But Kenya Kwanza side, I'm aware they are planning prayer and fasting. As other people move to the streets, Kenya Kwanza will be in a somber mood of prayer, praying for the country and asking even for divine intervention and revelation and great wisdom to flow to those who may opt to use other unorthodox means.
Willis, what is missing in this? Before
we must agree. We must agree on certain basics. And one basic is that the right to peaceably assemble and to demonstrate and picket is in our constitution. And I can picket even just by looking at your face and say, I don't like you, Trevor. That's my right to picket and to demonstrate and express myself. So that we start, even what my learned friend is saying, that Kenya Kwanza will be praying, that will be an assembly, exercising the right to assemble, to demonstrate the act of faith. The Azimio side will be demonstrating the act of picketing. So it's allowed in our constitution. So for whatever reason, you may not like the reason why someone is demonstrating, but allow them that opportunity to express themselves. I may not be familiar with the internal dealings between the the bipartisan process that Senator Luale, I think, is part of, and the Azimio side.
Which in itself should be a problem, because you're part of the Kenyans, part of a Safina party.
You see, that I was going to say exactly that the starting point for the bipartisan talks, it is exclusivist to an extent that even when now you have a breakdown in communication between the two playing partners. We are just seeing the fiction. We are not understanding the details of why there's that. So it should have been a national conversation that you bring in other. I think there was some group that had gone to court to try to have an opportunity for other Kenyans to participate. Yeah. Because the issues that Azimio raised, and I also saw the issues that Kenya Kwanza raised, are not issues that are owned only by those two coalitions. They are issues that go beyond the coalitions and will affect all Kenyans ultimately. But the point is this: if Azimio, being fully aware of the internal intricacies of the relationship they are having in the bipartisan talks, have opted to publicly express their disaffection with the process through a demonstration and a picket. And I noticed they've also now added they're going to demonstrate about the Finance Act. They're going to raise the question of the Finance Act, the high cost of living that is rising every day. Yeah. Some of those may not even be, may not have been issues in the bipartisan at the time when it was conceived. So they are well within their right to go and demonstrate. In fact, the last Azimio demonstration and picket that was done was last week. And to bring my learned friend to quick with the facts, not a single stone was thrown. That was when Raila Baba was coming back from abroad. Azimio congregated at Kamukunji, a long procession, demonstration, did their rally. Not a single stone was thrown. We must ask ourselves, how comes when they announced Azimio in advance that we are going to be holding our demonstration on particular days, then now you see the police coming out in arms to attack and to cause chaos? Because Adrian talks about policemen who are armed, but the majority of Kenyans who are armed in these demonstrations are not policemen, they are citizens, armed by officers of the law. In fact, let me not call them officers, let me call them rogue officers of the law, because majority of policemen are not, I can say, engaged in acts of intentionally harming civilians. So the ones who are doing it are just rogue elements within the force. Majority are doing their work as expected. So let's just agree that politically, even if you don't agree with what Azimio is saying that we are going to demonstrate, but at least let's respect their right in Article 37 to go and say it, and allow them to convene, to picket, and express themselves. That's the same, in similar vein, if Kenya Kwanza are going to pray, I respect their right to convene and to pray, for whatever reason. Even if it's just to pray for Azimio to be saved. That is okay. That is their right. I may not agree with why Azimio needs to be saved, or why it is in the interest of Kenya Kwanza for Azimio members to be saved, because if Azimio is self-destructing, they should be happy that Azimio is self-destructing. But I'll respect their right to convene and to pray and even to fast. Only to put a caveat that the fasting, I'll only have a problem if it starts now pushing towards Shakahola kind of fasting, that now people are going to die and not eat beyond what is permissible.
Halwale, what is the problem? Kenyans were looking at your teams to come to an agreement. What is the problem now? Because we are back to protest again.
Kamodo has nailed it. It's a question of goodwill. I have sat in every meeting of the bipartisan talks, and I'm amazed at how fast, Willis Okello, your side changes. We had the issues that were to be discussed drawn by both sides, and we agreed to start business. Then, all of a sudden, there was a change in goalposts. Said, no, beyond these issues, we now want to discuss the membership of Honorable Kainan to this committee. It became a very serious issue. We agreed. We removed Kainan. Then when we thought all was well, we went to the meeting, and again it shifted. They said, we now want to bring in the issue of the leadership of Jubilee Party, that the talks should be hinged on whether Uhuru faction of Jubilee would be the one that would be in control of that party or not. It had nothing to do with us. And now, last week, when we met our side of the talks and said, we want to reconvene the following Tuesday, which was last week, so that we tackle at least the most urgent issue in the House, i.e. IEBC. They changed. They said now, the Finance Act. So, what do you do with these people? They are our colleagues. Some of them are our seniors, but we do not understand them. At the end of the day, what do I make out of it? Personally, I think, Okello, you're just a case of a spoiled child. Having gotten what you wanted by force, by banging your head on the wall, because father doesn't want you to hurt your head, you think you'll always get it. When your side of the leadership got it by forcing President Uhuru on handshake, you think you can force President Ruto. When you got it, when you forced your way into the Mwai Kibaki government, Grand Coalition and what it is.
You were part of this.
I was not. Grand Coalition government. I was a part of Kibaki. I was elected. I was the only member of parliament. You remember my car being torched? I'd elected against the grain. The entire area was ODM. But I went to the people as a leader and they voted for me. So it is part of my chemistry that I don't follow the crowd. I follow my mind. So when you got it from Moi through the so-called merger cooperation and whatnot, this is the same threat that we are seeing in practice. They are hoping that they'll do the same on President Ruto so that they get what they want. If it was otherwise, the bipartisan talks provide a perfect platform. But that platform, when your leadership looks at it carefully, it realizes there is no quick fix. Things must be done procedurally, and therefore they are looking for a way out to go back to the people, bang their heads on the wall, so that somebody says, no, Raila is hurting his head, please give him what he wants. I'm not too sure that it is going to happen. I am not the president, but maybe going by what I am seeing, the country is now fed up of those antics. You have sent me to the president. Thank you very much, to go and deliver a message. But why are you troubling me? All the way in Kakamega. Go next door. Talk to Ojanda. In fact, he was with the president yesterday. Talk to Professor Tom Ojanda. He was the president yesterday. If they are too far back in the rural areas,
they have no shares.
Go here. Go here at Langata.
You have bigger shares.
Jalango was with the president. I have not been with the president since the time of the Safari rally. They were with him yesterday. So ring them. And I can tell you, my brother,
Trevor,
let me tell you, with a bit of experience, let me share with you. Your community has changed. For real, it has changed. I remember once upon a time when James Orengo and I were supporting Shemo Chwodo in the days of NDP. We were patrolled, bombed at the High Court in Kisumu. I don't want to strip myself naked on this screen. I was knifed that day at the Kisumu High Court. The mark is here. I was saved by Aga Khan Hospital in Kisumu. That time, you would not get a single Luo leader who would do what these gallant sons of yours are doing today. And because the community has now embraced that, it is a message that kwa ground, mambo iko different.
Okay. Maybe I say this. Maybe what I should tell them. I've just read a text from the people of Kondele. They are inviting these gallant soldiers to go and tell that message at Kondele bus stop.
Let me start.
Your mother don't dare.
No,
don't dare accept that.
Let me start by saying this. More times than number, Right Honorable Prime Minister has come out to say that he's more concerned about the welfare of ordinary Kenyans than his own. He has categorically said that he does not need a handshake, much less with William Ruto and Gachagua. He does not want anything handshake, but he would want a progressive, peaceful, life-affordable country. That is his dream, and that is the legacy he would want to be remembered for. So I don't want my colleagues here to start misquoting Baba. And they have, run this tired narrative that we are doing all this for a handshake. What can it take for Baba to call Ruto and have a meeting with him over breakfast? But he knows if he does that, it will be in total vain. Because they talk, and within a few minutes, he walks back on all the promises that he has made. Secondly, I'm very glad that Kenya Kwanza is contemplating prayers. A prayerful nation is a successful nation. But I also want to tell them that, you do not tempt God. You do not pray, and after prayers, you get involved in fertilizer scandal, in edible oil scandal, in sugar laced with mercury and aflatoxin, and sending it to the masses to consume. That does not square with prayers. Prayers are central values to us, and all Kenyans pray in their own ways, and they pray to the gods that they subscribe to. And that is also enshrined in our constitution.
Yeah.
But a narrative has always been created that Kenya Kwanza is more prayerful than Azimio. But they do the direct opposite of what the prayers ought to be. And again, we need not to judge people on the basis of faith, because we subscribe to various faiths. And I respect each and everybody's faith and everybody's views about religion and religiosity. Azimio chose dialogue over violence or over anything else. But we have increasingly seen William Ruto not being serious on anything that we present. And a very classical example, Trevor. One fundamental issue that is sticking out is the cost of living, which Honorable Alwale's team was to talk about and see how to bring down cost of living to the ordinary Kenyans. What did they do? They came up with another finance act that increases the cost of living. Now, you are here debating about an issue, seeing how it can be addressed, but the other party does the complete opposite. Do you still think we need to sit down with them and talk about cost of living? Now, we talk about issues of IBC, for instance, and we are saying, and this we will always repeat, in order to come up with a complete closure on last elections, the servers must be opened. That is the only way that Kenyans will see that indeed Ruto won, or indeed Raila Odinga won, because we believe that if the servers will be open, and that is why they are very slow to accept opening of that server, because they know that the content of the server is totally different from the person occupying that office.
But this is what the problem is, Okello, because you said that you wanted them to respect the court's decision. Why aren't you doing the same? This was prosecuted in the Supreme Court. It was done and dusted. Why are we still on the same?
If you remember, Trevor, because you were in this country, I didn't see you travel during the course of a petition at the Supreme Court. The court made an order for the servers to be opened. An anonymous letter in the letterhead of some company called what? You were in court. There's a company that wrote a letter saying if we open the servers, then it will compromise
their copyright. Copyright, yes.
Yes. And the courts chose to rely on that letter, a letter. And the servers were never opened.
The company is called Smartmatics.
Yes, Smartmatics, yes. They wrote some letter, a letter that we did not know its origin and its authenticity. And it was not even subjected to authentication. But the court said, because of the strength, on the strength of this letter, we are not going to open the servers. And that is how IBC escaped the hangman's noose, because they were going to be hanged. Now, being what it is, the courts decided, the 7 people at the Supreme Court made that decision. So we are saying, now that...
Supreme Court judges.
Yeah, the Supreme Court judges. Now that we are beyond the petition, why can't we as a country now, look at that server? Okay. Because again, remember, the servers were not bought by IBC money. The servers were not bought by William Ruto's money. It was the Kenyan people's money through their own taxes. And, you know, they say there is no taxation without representation.
Yeah.
So Kenyans agreed to be taxed so that those kinds of things like the servers could be bought. Now, you have a server that can never be opened. The servers bought by the Kenyan money. And we are saying that in order to come up with a complete closure, and we need closure on this matter so that the country can move forward, let us open that server. If Ruto won, why is he very slow to accept the servers to be open?
Okay.
Now, this is very important, Trevor.
Yeah, very briefly.
We've always wanted a path of dialogue.
Yes.
Always.
You have it.
But what they are doing in line with our 4 items is the complete opposite. So how do you then trust us, trust them, and sit down with them again to talk about the very issues that they quickly walk back on all the time? So we are saying, because Ruto does not want the talks, we are engaging Kenyans tomorrow to now talk directly to William Ruto.
Okay.
And indeed, he will have to bulge.
Okay. Let's talk about one issue, hiring of the IEBC commissioners. And I see it's part of the stories on even the Daily Nation here. But there's a soundbite from Raila Odinga and Mr. George Murugara, who is also one of the co-chairs of the bipartisan talks. This is what they had to say in regards to this particular issue of hiring of IEBC commissioners.
It is our position this afternoon to state that the process of recruitment by the selection panel, as far as we are concerned, is not hindered by any order, by any directive, or by anything from anyone, and therefore it should proceed as the law prescribes. We do have the law in place, and this is the law that actually should be applied so that the process can continue, because even if there was a lull in this, it was not because of direction from anyone, but due to the fact that the country and everyone knew that these talks are ongoing, and that issue is one of the issues to be discussed.
Kenya Kwanza cannot solely, alone, single-handedly appoint the referee in the elections. That is very unfair. Those then will be their own elections. They are not going to be Kenyan national elections. You said that Azimio must be part and parcel of appointing the electoral commissioners. So that must be decided jointly. They are the ones who actually scatter the talks. They even refuse to stop that task force from proceeding ahead. The task force has said that they never stopped. They have never been told to stop at all. So they basically were just playing a game with us. But we are telling them those will not be Kenya national elections. And we hope that we will not reach that stage.
So, Kamodo, you said that there's no goodwill from the Azimio side. But you see now one of the main issues that they were talking about, which is hiring of IEBC commissioners, is going on as if it was not a contested issue. Where is the goodwill from the Kenya Kwanza side?
You see, goodwill also subscribes to the rule of law. The constitution of the IEBC is provided for. There is a mechanism that the law provides for in terms of how the IEBC should be structured. And in all the other issues, including what Jared talked about, the opening of the servers, you know, all these are calculated to paint the Kenya Kwanza in bad light. They will say that they want the servers to be opened, where they know very well that there is no voting that took place in the servers. People voted physically. They cast their ballots in which were put in ballot boxes. I wish they were asking for that we open ballot boxes, but the servers, it is actually a misadventure. It's like somebody saying that for you to prove that Bonnie was here this morning, you come and open the servers. Royal Media must open the servers to prove that we showed up here this morning. It's a completely absurd. So the issue of the servers being opened, even if they were to be opened, and I don't know what they mean. You know, sometimes there's actually a misapprehension of how a server operates. A server people think it's like this room where you open the door and you look inside. It's a system which tracks the movement of documents. That this document was sent from the polling station, was received at this point, and this is a record, this is a trail. But the critical document, and that is what was used to announce and to tally at the bombers, was the physical form from the polling station. And courts have ruled that elections are finalized at the polling station. That's why they said the final figures are at the polling station, not at the server. Even if you are to go there and have servers indicating that you had 30 million votes, you still don't qualify to be considered as having prevailed at the ballot. On the second issue about the selection panel, this selection panel, again, there is a false narrative that is being peddled that the appointment of IBC commissioners is an exercise by Kenya Kwanza. Nothing can be further from the truth. The process of picking these members of the selection panel is provided for under the IBC Act, which Mheshimiwa enacted. So, when they say that the selection panel should consist of representatives of the Parliamentary Service Commission, representative of the LSK, representatives of the Inter-Religious Council, and a representative of the Political Parties Liaison Committee, they took away the mandate of Kenya Kwanza. I wish Kenya Kwanza had a representative in that selection panel, and it doesn't. So whatever outcome, whatever list that will be generated, because these positions were advertised competitively.
Yeah.
The selection panel said, those who desire to be chairs, to chair the IBC, come forward. You make an application. It doesn't matter whether you are Kenya Kwanza, you are Safina, you are Azimio, you apply.
Okay.
And then at the end, 2 names will be recommended for appointment as chairperson. Then 6 members. They, after sifting through the CVs and all the applications, finally they will give a list of 9. And the president will pick from there. It's not that Kenya Kwanza is the one that will be picking. It's not the president that will be picking directly from a big pool.
Yeah.
It is the list that will have been provided by the selection panel, which has been working or has a composition that is cross-cutting.
Okay.
So the issue about Kenya Kwanza not showing goodwill in that matter is neither here nor there. What should Kenya Kwanza do?
Okay.
Especially when the law stipulates clearly that the process of appointing commissioners of the IBC is as per the first schedule to the IBC Act, which is provided for. And so the only intervention they would make is, again, as the people's representative, move to Parliament. Mheshimiwa can push for an amendment. But then he's also crying that he pushes amendments, but because he doesn't have numbers, he loses. And then he blames Kenya Kwanza.
Okay. Alwala, you want to jump in?
This is important. The issue of servers that has been brought by Gerald. Gerald, bipartisan talks. And Willis, help me on this one. Please, Kamoto, help me on this one. Jared, bipartisan talks. Whatever the composition of that team, even if it had Jesus Christ of Nazareth as a member, under the Constitution of Kenya, under the laws of Kenya, we do not have the power to order the so-called servers to be opened. Servers are supposed to be election materials. That is the preserve of a high court. It is only the high court which can order for scrutiny, recount, opening of ballot boxes, and you know it. So however much you push it, it will never come from the bipartisan talks. On the important issue which the former Prime Minister has spoken to, that is dishonesty. Why is he doing this? I do not understand. He knows very well that in the National Assembly, Gerald and his colleagues, you passed the IEBC Act for amendment so as to redefine the composition of the selection panel, you passed it with no problem. And now, when it came to the Senate, as it should, for concurrence, you had second thoughts. How did you respond? You informed the leader of the minority, Justice Madayo, to ask his colleagues to walk out on the bill. So while we were in the Senate, when you could have input the things that you required in the law so as to get what you wanted, you walked out. Were we supposed to stop? Legislation cannot stop because a few people are unhappy have walked out. It stops only when you don't have the prerequisite quorum. There was quorum in the House, and the law was passed. This business of saying that by the Prime Minister, the Kenya Kwanza wants to get commissioners all by itself is a great lie, because the people who will decide who are the commissioners is not the political parties, it is not the religious committee, it is not Kenya Kwanza, it is not Azimio, but it is the members of the selection panel.
Okay.
And he participated in creating that particular structure. So if we must vent our frustration for having missed out at the last election to be announced winners, we should not pursue the path of lies.
Okay.
The truth is, the selection panel, the law is in place, they don't need anything else, and that's why Waigara, Murugara, he is making it very, He's making it very clear that we don't have to do anything. The law is already there.
Yeah.
The selection panel should just do its work. In fact, that the selection panel is not working today demonstrates how far the president and Kenya Kwanza have bent backwards to accommodate Azimio. Yeah. We said, rest the work of the selection panel to give the bipartisan talks a chance.
Okay.
So instead of taking up that opportunity, again, you have rejected, you want to resort to the drama of running around. You can run in that streets. You can destroy as many businesses as possible. You can cause the unfortunate loss of lives as you want. That will not amount into lawmaking.
Okay.
You make law by going to the floor of the House.
Okay. Let me bring in Willis before I bring in Willis, there's something interesting that Alwale is raising before I give you a chance to respond.
Yes.
That even if, and I like being practical, so the bipartisan team, they've spoken and they've agreed, okay, fine, let the servers be opened. Then what? They don't have the mandate. You
see, number one, the question that they are raising, I don't believe that they're prosecuting a petition in the bipartisan talks. One thing that we must all agree, and even other Safina will demand of it, you must take stock of the technology that has been deployed in the elections. Okay. So even part of opening those servers is to make sure that you're taking stock of the technology that was deployed in the last elections to find, and this is in the elections technology regulations, to find ways in which you can improve on that technology. I believe a question as to who is present or not, that's a question that can only be handled by the courts and the parliaments of Kenya. But there's something interesting which I wanted to point out. Senator Halwale is saying is approbating and reprobating at the same time. On the one hand, he has said that they have no role whatsoever with the selection panel. But then he's telling us, President Ruto has told the selection panel to wait. And they've waited, no work has gone on as they wait for Azimio. I mean, we have to choose. It's either these people are taking instructions from President Ruto, or they're not. They're taking instructions from the law. But as it is, and corroborated by a senator, these people are actually under the control and direction of President Ruto, who is a major player in the next elections, whichever time it shall be called.
Yes,
so that what we are saying is very simple. And I'll say this, I'm not in Azimio, but I'll say this. The quest for a free and fair election is not an Azimio quest. It may even be in the best interest of Senator Lwale that we make sure that we come up with a more formidable and more credible electoral management body. that will guarantee all Kenyans, irrespective of their political party affiliations, a free and fair process. But where we are starting today, as I sit here, what I've gone out with from that has been said about the selection panel. In that panel is receiving calls from President Ruto, when to work and when to stop. Okay. And they have stopped for the last 2 months because they received the calls from President Ruto. So probably they've equally received calls from the same president to continue working. Yeah. The next step will be he will give them calls as to who to nominate. Okay. And then he, as the player, decides who becomes a commissioner. So, what is that?
So, Willis, again, I like being practical. So, for example, there's a total of 215 applicants who have expressed interest in replacing former IBC chairperson Wafula Chebukati. Are you saying out of all these 215, we can't find a Kenyan who's worth this job?
The problem is not finding a Kenyan. The problem is the Kenyan to be found. Because what we are being led towards is a process where, if you ask me, one political group, and probably I believe it is the Kenya Kwanza group, they've already found the Kenyan, so they're taking you through the rigmarole, just a charade that will give you that Kenyan to become the chairperson and a commissioner of the IBC. What we are simply saying, because we have many Kenyans of integrity who can do this job, what we are simply saying, and even as we'll share in that conversation, let's have a process of selecting a commission and a chairperson that is free and fair, that is open and transparent, that the outcome is not predetermined. The outcome is an outcome that will instill confidence in the electoral process. Otherwise, remember, President Kibaki in 2007 equally said, the law is very clear, we'll use the law to choose an election commission. And he used the law. The consequence was an election that was widely disreputed, that even when an independent review of that election was done by Kriegler Commission, the verdict was one. We cannot know whoever won or lost this election. We are simply saying, don't go that route. Okay. Just to go, and Senator Lole, I think, was in the Windsor group.
Yes, I was.
Of 2017.
I was.
Again, they went through a process, and at the tail end, in fact, the Windsor talks, which Senator Alwale participated in, was discussing amendments to improve the elections process, how to come up with a free and fair election. And he will tell you that the weakest link in that Windsor process was at the tail end, when they decided to confer on Uhuru Kenyatta the responsibility to make the ultimate decision. You give him 3 names to choose one to be president, to be chairperson of the commission. You give him 17 names to choose, 9 names to choose 6. Yeah. The end result was the selection panel then gave President Uhuru, the person who was number 1, Mr. Olekina, the person who was number 2, Rosemary Odede, and the person who was number last, Wafula Chebukati. In the interviews, he was number 9 out of 9. They gave President Uhuru to select one of the 3 to be the chairperson. What did President Uhuru do? He didn't choose number 1, who was Olekina, the Malindi lawyer. He didn't choose Rosemary, who is now the chairperson of Kenya National Commission of Human Rights. He chose Wafula Chebukati. What do you think informed that decision? Being a player in the elections, of course, he may have decided to use extra legal means to arrive at a verdict. So that what we are simply saying, Senator Alwale, I will advise, you've gone through this process before, and you've seen what it led to. At least for once, let's just agree that the referee needs to be an independent referee. Me, I was a victim of Wafula Chebukati was receiving calls from other quarters.
Okay, that cannot be verified.
But he was appointed by Uhuru.
Yes, I agree. I'm not saying. I agree.
No verification, but Okello, you haven't spoken for a while, then I'll come to you.
Trevor,
yes.
Trevor, I'm leaving Royal Media Studios, a very disturbed person. When they birthed the 7-member panel from either party, we thought that these were independent minds that were going to prosecute matters before them independently and objectively. My friend Honorable Halwale has just told us that their wing of that divide is remote controlled by one William Samoei Ruto from State House. No wonder we are not moving. I only thought that just the same way we gave the latitude to our coalition side to go and use their wisdom, triggering their own impulses, so that a decision that is reflective of the 4 agenda items will be reached and the country can be able to move forward. Now we are vindicated when we say we have to move out of these talks, because we are not going to have talks that are going to be remote controlled by one from the house on the hill. It is true that the decision at the polling station is final, just as my friend, the lawyer, has indicated. That decision from the polling station is sent to a portal, a server, which is held by IEBC. And we are saying, yes, we are past the polling station. All those documents are in the server. Let us open the server. If you read the Elections Act, it mandates IEBC to store election materials for 3 years. The idea was in line with Article 35 of the Constitution, that anyone can request for any information held by the state or any state agency. 3 years. It is barely a year since we finished last year's elections. We are still within the 3-year window for the servers to be opened. It is a matter of right. It is not a right given to us by William Ruto. When we ask for information in line with the Constitution, it should be provided. And we are then very disturbed that 8 months since we started asking for the servers, nothing is happening, only to be confirmed that they are receiving calls from William Ruto at every turn of the talks at Pan-African Hotel. The composition of the selection panel, as my brothers here would want to run away from, they are saying that is a separate entity. Remember, Public Service Commission, under direct control and supervision of one William Samoei Ruto, has 2 representatives. Parliamentary Service Commission, and I told you how Parliament has been muzzled by William Ruto, has 2 in that panel. They cherry-picked representatives from the religious grouping and all these other groupings, cherry-picked. Why was, for instance, Ogonyonge, the Bishop of Kisumu, was not put into that panel? Just like my friend Halwale has alluded to, even when you subject the Pope sitting in Rome to cast his votes, presenting candidates, he will put his vote one way or another.
Yeah.
So there is no independence, and that is why we are saying IEBC cannot be left in the hands of William Samoei Ruto to decide, because we know each and every person is aligned somewhat to a particular direction. You were in this country, probably you were very young, in 1997, during the IPPG, that led to elections of the year 2002. It was a cross-party commission. We used to call it Electoral Commission of Kenya, ECK. Now, in the year 2002, when we went with that team, that was reflective of all political divides, opinions. It is the only time that Kenya went through a credible election, an election that was not subjected to any petition anywhere, and the whole country celebrated. That is the only one and the last one. We are saying this, Trevor. You know, when you deal with despots never want dialogue. And we have seen it happen here. But I said, a time has come that Kenyans must bring them on dialogue table. And it will have to happen whether they want to run away from it or not.
Let's hear what the Kenyans are saying, because we're running out of time here. Then I'll give you each a chance, 1 minute each for closing remarks. Let's bring up, I'll give you a chance. Let's hear what the Kenyans themselves have to say, because you're representing the people. I'll give you a chance to just give closing remarks. Let's bring that up on TVNC at Trevor Mbidi at Citizen TV Kenya is the hashtag Daybreak. Bobo Tieno Wino says we aren't sincere with bipartisan talks because they kept on shifting posts with the new demands each and every day, which Kenya Kwanza alluded to. All right, that is not, it's not a complete statement, but we'll see what you're saying. Kipto Ruto says we have seen the opposition MPs and senators walk out every time serious issues are discussed in Parliament. They should use the platform they have been given to tackle some of these issues. They are solving nothing by talking in the streets and rallies. Okay. Let's move on to the next one. Remy Butia says there are plenty of time for political brouhahas on other issues. It's time to show the world that bipartisan talks is still possible and that Kenya can still find ways to tackle our biggest challenges, not just appease the loudest voices. Okay? Jim Munene says it's time now for the Kenya Kwanza team to pull in the civil society groups and third force political players like Ikuru Okot, Ruben Kigame to the bipartisan talks and proceed constituting IEBC. Life in Kenya must move on. Okay? Ken Nyaminde says the goodwill Senator Halwale is talking about does not exist on Kenya and KK side. The IEBC panel has been working, yet it's one of the contentious issues. KK are playing brain games and not being honest, okay? Magwa says if Kenya Kwanza team was serious about bipartisan talks that was supposed to address the cost of living, then the president wouldn't have come with the punitive finance bill that was going to increase taxes. Lack of goodwill came from KK, okay? Odongo Rolex says the president needs some advice from the legal team, not his sycophants. He should divert his attention to deal with high cost of living. Okay? Kishjoro says IBC didn't buy servers. They rented space on servers belonging to Smartmatic. Okay? Ras Bashir says President Ruto should be reminded that by imposing punitive taxes on the already drained Mwananchi and with no public participation, he's battling law, the constitution, and not the courts. We have a legal document that must be followed strictly. Peter says tell Honorable Jared Okello of Maandamano won't help anything. Okay? The issue of finance bill is in court. Let the executive hold its horses as we wait for the verdict. EPRA must be sued for hurriedly implementing new fuel prices. Okay. Sawe says KK administration is pushing Kenyans to the limit with more taxes to fund a wasteful and greedy few individuals in government. Corruption is budgeted, investors are running away, and KK is doing nothing about it. Can't tax to prosperity. Okay. Chaluwood Rosie says Azimio elected members of parliament should debate issues in the floor of the house instead of tackling too much on the streets and heckling the president all the time. That is how they lost elections. Okay. Kiswe Philip says it is time for politicians to develop measurable indicators that are meant to gauge the level of their success in leadership. If the country grows poor, if the people become poorer under your leadership, then you've cleared that statement. Kiswe Philip says it is time for politicians to develop measurable indicators that are meant to gauge the level of their success in leadership. If the country grows poor, if the people become poorer under your leadership, etc., then you're failing. Okay. All right, Alwale, closing remarks really fast.
Very quickly,
yes.
You can see from the response of Kenyans that this matter divides us almost in the middle.
Yeah.
And therefore, it calls for leadership. I want to request my two brothers, Jared and Willis, stick to the truth. That's all.
Okay.
Like now, when you tell us that the president is given 3 names and he chose to cherry pick, that he should have picked number 1 and not number 2 and not number 3. You know, you're misleading the public. That is not what the law says. The law says the president shall be given 3 names. And it doesn't go further by demanding that he picks in order of how the names were presented. You know it, Willis, you're a lawyer. In fact, when Moi thought that he could use the chair of the commission to get a desired result, i.e. Uhuru become president, he forced Kivuitu. And Kivuitu didn't get him the result he wanted. When Raila came after him, because now Raila was the prime minister, he forced Isaac Hassan to become the chair of IEBC. Isaac Hassan did not give Raila the victory he had looked for. Similarly, when Uhuru settled on Chebukati, hopefully he thought he would use Chebukati to get what he wanted. But Chebukati became his own man. Well, as I tell you, Kenyans are watching you very carefully, and you are a young man. They are watching you very carefully. This misrepresentation of facts, you are talking about servers and how the petition should have gone one way or the other. You are the same Willis who was in court. And Kenyans will never forget that when you are given an opportunity to help what you believed was the right way for justice to go, instead you broke into sweat, Instead, you started speaking in mother tongue and other forms of tongue.
The same way you see.
Finish.
So you started speaking in tongues.
Okay.
I can assure you, my brother, and it's just a matter of time before you come and sit where we are in the Senate or in the National Assembly or even in the executive. It is not going to help you. Lying.
Okay.
Time
is running out.
Yes.
We had a minute each.
Lying.
Yes. Two.
No, you have talked.
I mean, three minutes.
Okay. This is for Kamoda and Khalwale.
Oh, it's 5 minutes each.
The issue of IEBC, when he says the president is making calls to the selection panel, that is dishonesty, my brother. You know very well that the only condition President Ruto put when he agreed to have bipartisan talks, he said, so that we go and fix IEBC. It was not an afterthought.
All right.
He has remained consistent to what he believed in.
Gentlemen, we really have to leave it there, but Willis, I'll give you 30 seconds because you've been mentioned. Just 30 seconds. Yes.
I'll just say this.
Yes.
The Lord is my witness. I never lie. My history and Senator Lwale's history speak for itself. We know whatever positions we've all taken at any given time in the history of this country.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. We have to leave it there because we've run out of time. Let's take a quick break and come back. It's time for Chef Sharon on the cooking tips, all right? Bye for now.